We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. Today, I'm here with Christy Keeton of Keeton Realty Investments. Now, before the show, her and I were talking about realty investments, and I assume, or I take the assumption, that my audience has been listening long enough to have a pretty decent idea of what realty investments are. So we're not going to bore you with all of the facts of what she does and the intricacies of realty investing particularly, but we want to hear what special takes that she has on things and how she got started in the real estate investing business. So, Christy, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Casey. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real privilege.
No, the privilege is all ours. We're definitely glad you're here. I think I said that right. The privilege is all. No.
Pleasure.
Anyway, we thank you for being
Thank
here
you.
because we wouldn't have a show without our guests, and so we definitely thank you for being here. And but we want to learn a little bit more about who Christy is and how you got into the real estate investing business. Then we can kind of maybe get through your take on things and how maybe you all do it differently, and then where it go from there. So
Absolutely.
go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Thank you so much, Casey. So I was in the oil and gas industry for more than 15 years, and my expertise there was to analyze where we wanted to drill wells, if it was going to be profitable, those type of things, our annual budgets. I did all of that for about 15 years. And my son graduated in 2010, and he decided he wanted to go into the real estate. That DIY HGTV bug grabbed a hold of him. I'm like, all right, let's do this. So we opened Keeton Realty Investments actually in 2012 after he did a year in college, decided that wasn't for him. So in 2012, we opened Keeton Realty Investments, and we started flipping houses. We flipped a few houses. And he decided, he was going to move to Arizona with some friends. He's got some buddies out there. So he moves to Arizona, and I'm like, okay, well, I've got my oil industry job, my little W-2. It's decent pay. I'm going to go ahead and keep this. Well, in April of 2019, it came to my attention that I was being asked to do things that I didn't really, feel comfortable doing. And so it was a mutual agreement that I stepped down from the company, and they said, yeah, we don't think that you're a good fit here anymore. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm not a good fit. I'm not going to do the things that you're asking me to do. And so I'm like, all right, okay, God, what do you want me to do now? Where am I going to go? Right. Well, I was scrolling on Facebook one day, like we all do, and I see an advertisement for multifamily mentoring. And I mean, it just hit me, Casey, like a ton of bricks. I was like, wait a minute, people own apartments. Like, it never occurred to me because I didn't know that mindset, right? It's like, people own apartments. So I started really digging into it. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to take the money that I have and I'm going to invest it in myself to learn how to do multifamily investing. And that's what I did. I took the $40,000 and then some others because I didn't realize that I didn't need all the extra stuff. But I took the $40,000 that they asked for and I invested it. And I thought, it's a make or break at this point. I can always go back to a W-2. Oil industry is always hiring. I can always go back to a W-2, but I didn't want to be under the thumb of man. So I wanted to be able to have my time, my freedom. I don't want to have to ask somebody to take a vacation to go see a grandbaby, right? That's what I did. I started coaching. And from there, it I started networking. I've realized during my coaching, that year of coaching that I had, the best thing to do is to network, and it doesn't matter how you network. You know,
Oh yeah.
you can go to brokerages and talk to those guys there. Take them lunch, something. Take them to coffee. Take them to lunch. Meetup groups was probably the very first networking that I started doing, is through meetup groups in the area,
Yeah.
with real estate brokers, with insurance brokers, whatever I could find that could further me in the multifamily business or the real estate business in general. That's what I did, right? So
Yep.
if I knew that there was going to be a meetup group in the area, I would find it and I would go.
Absolutely. That's the meetup groups are like the thing.
They are.
And I don't, I'm kind of struggling with getting mine going.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something after the show or later on, we might be able to talk a little bit about how people maybe rounded you all up and got you in,
Oh, sure.
to the meetup groups, because the networking is, you're spot on.
Yeah.
And the daily podcast has really allowed me to make a lot of connections, just one at a time, as people come through here.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, I still want to have a meetup group so that everybody can meet one another too, especially in our local area.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
but yeah, I just learned about meetup.com. That's a free plug for them. About a month ago.
Oh,
So,
really?
yep.
It's awesome, man. You're gonna love it. Once you start doing meetup groups, it'll get big enough to where you'll have to have somebody kind of overlook that for you, because with your daily podcast, people are going to want to meet you. They're going to want to meet your people, if you will, and they're going to want to meet, in the general area, regardless of where it's at. I'm right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee right now, in
Okay.
North Georgia.
I'm just northwest of Nashville.
Okay, awesome.
So I'm up around Clarksville, Tennessee. I'm in a little town called Hopkinsville, Kentucky.
I know where Hopkinsville is. We're looking for properties there.
Are you really? Yeah, I think everybody is.
Yeah. So yeah, the meetup groups were my first networking. So, and that was one of the things that my coach told me from the very beginning. If you can get in a meetup group, it doesn't matter how small or big it is. One person in a networking event can change your life. Just one.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yes.
And that's a lot of times where, you always hear, like, especially being this close to Nashville, you always hear country music stars, or football players or hockey players. They talk about their big break, and even though football players, we all know how they all come into the league and stuff, but they still at some point or another get recognized as being a talent, and that's even, and so your big break most likely comes when you're least expected, and all of a sudden somebody steps into your life and you're like, wait a minute.
Absolutely.
For lack of a better term, call them a spirit animal.
Yes.
You're my spirit animal. I am coming with you. You know all the ropes. You know all the people.
Absolutely.
And so, yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more
Absolutely.
about the networking, and I have found my kind of secret sauce to gaining relationships, maybe if you had to forcefully do so, is to buy somebody a drink.
Yes.
Send a drink to their table or something. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? And so anyway, it's the same scenario.
Yes,
But
absolutely. No. So one of the things that I like to do with my brokers now, and I mean even insurance agents and lenders, is to send them things like tipped treats. On a Friday afternoon, just open. Send them enough for the whole office, and just bless the whole office with warm cookies and a little bit of milk, and it goes a long way, because they remember you, right? So even their staff, when you call and the receptionist answers and you say, "Hey, this is Christy Keeton," she's like, "Oh, cookies! When do we get those again?" Right? And so that's that's one of those things. I'm like, I'll send them. Those are the type of things, or even those edible arrangements. And again, it's investing in your relationships with those people, right? So the one person I met at Ultimate Partnering 2019. Her name is Kim Winland with Quattro Capital, and I met her at this partnering event, and she said, "Wait a minute, we're both Texas girls. I don't understand why we're not friends." And I was like, "I don't either. So let's be friends." So we started building a relationship, and we started maintaining that relationship over the last few years.
Yeah.
And on my last flip house back at the end of 2019, again, I was still, although I was flipping the house, I was still looking, building relationships with brokers, trying still to find a deal, and try to build relationships with investors as well. So
Yeah.
I had a phone call that I had to take, and it was an investor, and I went behind the detached garage of this house, and I was on the phone talking to an investor about a deal that I didn't even have yet.
Yep.
It's not necessarily fake it till you make it, but if I find a deal, I'm going to bring it to you. And, and I'm on the phone and I'm just talking it up with this guy. And here comes Kim walking around the corner and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I have an investor on the phone." And she's like, "Okay." Well, that right there deepened our relationship because I wasn't willing to give up, even though I had been doing this for a while. I couldn't and didn't I didn't have a deal. I was still building relationships. And that deepened the relationship that Kim and I had, and we became partners, solid partners, in August of 2020.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
yeah, and from there, I they had asked me to be an alliance partner, and I had accepted the invitation. And basically, I've been sourcing deals for them now for the last almost 2 years. Last year, yeah, last year
That's great.
alone.
That's an awesome way to get started and get
Oh
going. I
yeah.
mean, especially like you said, when you catch that big break, or
Mhm.
or when that big break finally comes, the other part of catching a big break is realizing when you've gotten
Oh
it.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely,
I mean, at least
absolutely.
that's the way I see it.
Yeah.
So some people see it and they're like, "Huh? What?"
Yeah. Yeah. No, you have to recognize it and grab a hold of it with everything you have. You really do. And so with Quattro Capital, they're a team of five, and they became my capital partner in 2020. And I started building relationships. I still had broker relationships, but now I realized that I'm going to be able to close a deal because now I have what they call a balance sheet, with somebody that can help me close the deal financially, right? Even though
Yeah.
I had been building all the relationships with these other investors, none of them had said, "Yeah, I'll do a deal with you," right? But
Yep.
Quattro Capital did. And so they became my capital partners, and last year together, over 65 million in
So did they
acquisitions.
come like in as a key partner almost,
Yeah.
or a KP or
Yep.
whatever, like where so you're basically like you're like, "Hey, I found these
Yep.
deals. I need your balance sheet. I'm going to give you a certain share of the GP." And then they come in and now you
Yes.
okay, cool.
Yes.
That's
That's
awesome.
exactly what happened.
Good deal.
So, as of last Friday 13th, as a matter of fact, we closed another 220 units Friday 13th. So that was awesome. So
Awesome. Where was that at?
that one is in the Huntsville area, Decatur, Alabama.
Yep.
Yeah,
Alabama is really a hotbed
it
right
is,
now.
especially in
I
the
know
Huntsville area.
several people in the Huntsville market, several people in the Birmingham
Yeah,
market, several people in the Mobile market.
yeah.
There's a lot going on in Alabama right now, and I just don't think I I'm not quite sure exactly. I think, of course, the fact that California is still
Hmm.
dispersing at this point,
Yep.
people are still coming by the droves
Yeah,
out of
yeah.
there,
And
and
New
and,
York.
and it's just a wave. Yeah, everybody's coming
Yeah.
south. They're coming
Yeah.
west or
Yep.
coming east,
Hmm.
and so it's one of those deals where yeah, and I just think and Alabama has a lot of great assets to offer. As a matter of fact, I mean, from an industry standpoint, not necessarily real estate industry, but like manufacturing
Hmm.
industry, they have a lot of like benefits that far
Oh yeah.
outweigh virtually every other state. I mean, I've seen people leave Oregon to come heater manufacturer one time that I knew left the
Yeah.
Northwest solely to come to Alabama, and I was like, why'd you come to Alabama? And he started explaining it to me, and I was like, well, and I was still in college, so of course I was still learning all
Yeah.
that stuff.
For sure.
But Alabama has some of the friendliest or used to have some of the
Yeah.
friendliest manufacturing lawn cares. But anyway,
And aerospace
so
industry. The aerospace industry really loves Huntsville.
yeah,
Hmm.
and it's so weird that it's right. It's so weird that it's in Huntsville, Alabama, of all
I
places.
know. We talk about
I
that all the
mean,
time.
I've been there, and I think it has something to do with the direction and proximity to Houston. Maybe I'm not
Possibly.
100% sure about that. Again, that's just purely could be just something I dreamed up. But anyway, so yeah, so you just closed on that
Yeah.
deal. How many doors do you all have under management right now, or how many different units do you have right now?
So Keeton Realty Investments has almost 1,000 units under our belt right now under management. We
Awesome.
are in the process of selling 110 of those
Okay.
units. Coming full circle with this one. I'm so excited. This is my first full circle deal. Got it in January of
Yeah.
last year. We basically, our value add at this point, we were going to go in there and do renovations and all of that, but we basically had to clean up the mess. Some plumbing mess that we had going on. There was some tenant base that we had to turn over, things like that. And we've got that pretty much under control. And our brokers came to us and said, now's a really good time to get rid of it. And we're like, okay, let's do it. Let's see what we can do. And so just went under
Yeah.
contract this morning. I believe it was signed this morning. So we're excited about
Man,
that.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And what was you said it was a little over a year, I think
Mhm.
is what you told me
Yeah.
earlier. Okay. And what's the total equity multiple going to be on that?
I believe it ended up at 1.7. Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 70% in a
Yeah.
year, or a little over a
Yeah.
year. Wow. Plus whatever uh uh plus whatever weight that the current tenants or the current income has been
Yes.
toting the bill on top of
Yep.
that. I mean, yeah, that's unreal.
It is.
That's awesome.
It's a
Um,
beautiful thing. That one is actually in Decatur, Georgia. And Decatur,
okay.
Georgia is, if you don't know where that's at, it's just east of Atlanta. It's just outside of the loop of Atlanta, and
Sure.
it is a hot area as well. So we're
Okay.
excited about it.
Well, and some of these, I guess I've almost gotten numb to hearing the word tertiary,
Yeah.
because it's such a. But as cap rates have compressed in the
Mhm.
bigger
Yeah.
areas and just continue to just get pounded from the top because everybody wants part of this supposed
Yeah.
anti-inflation money hedge, whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, multifamily stuff. Those markets like that have had no choice but to go anywhere to go but up. I
Correct.
mean, and you've got people that are investing at cap rates, and and I've said it on this show many times, and it's difficult for people to understand, and it's a difficult concept to understand that there's a potential that cap rates could go negative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and at some point you could the lower your or the higher your negative number, the better off you're going to be, and that's of course not where I feel like some of us that are trying to balance the cash flow
Right.
and balance the overall capital gain. That's really not a space where we want to go play very much.
Right.
And so, but those markets like you're talking about, Decatur, Georgia,
Yeah.
being just east of
Mhm.
Atlanta, I mean that's a market that 5 years ago, I mean, you probably could have just you could have had your choice for at 65 or seventy
Yep.
thousand dollars a
Yep.
unit. I mean, you probably could have bought all of
Yep.
them, and now they're bringing double that.
Oh yeah,
So,
for sure, if not
or
more.
maybe even more than
Yeah.
that.
So
Yeah. So,
so when we started talking about selling this property, was when we got notification that there was a property just within like 5 miles of this that sold at 284,000 per door. I'm like, how? How does that even
yeah,
work? Well,
they must. Yeah.
it's basically, there's a lot of international money coming in, right? And
Yep.
so
Yep.
because our 3% return on money is like their 7 or 8% return on their money in their country.
Correct.
So bringing their money
Yep.
over here, they get a lot more back, bang for their buck here, than they would
Yep.
there. So
Yeah.
it's amazing what they're doing with they're just looking to park money somewhere, and they don't want it they don't necessarily want it in their own country because they can make more here. So,
Yeah, and I think everybody has fears of
oh,
inflation in
sure.
general,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, because other countries don't quite have the inflationary um, they don't quite have the inflationary structure like we
Right,
do, I
right.
guess, if that makes sense. But when things start plugging along here, and inflation here, it could mean massive profits over there,
Correct.
especially then they can capitalize on exchange rates and other things as well
Oh,
as they
yeah.
go along the way. So, with that all being said, when you start looking at, I want to talk a little bit about your due diligence process,
Sure.
and this is just a random question because you pretty much didn't have a lot of background in this space, and so that's just something that popped in my mind as a complete random
Sure.
question. I'd like to know how you, first of all, how you developed a due diligence process,
Okay.
and number two, what are some things that you specifically, because honestly, due diligence is kind of like, from my experience over the years, selling just even single family residences. You have some people who the floor's falling in, the walls are falling over, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry about it.
That can be
Me and
fixed.
Dad can fix that in the weekend." Or you have somebody who's got a leaking kitchen faucet, and they're like, "I want out of this deal. I want out. This is unacceptable."
All right.
And so, so everybody has their own
Yeah.
processes, and everybody has their own ways of looking at things. And I'd like to know, with somewhat of your newness to the
Yeah.
space, I'd like to know a little bit more about what that process looks like, how you developed it, and so on.
Yeah, so that's an excellent question because not a lot of people ask that question, and that's one of the biggest things that you need to have in place in order to do the deal the right way. And so, a
Yeah.
couple of things. The first thing is I found a team that could help me through that because they had been through it a couple of times, right? So Quattro Capital again, they had been through it a couple of times, um, and the they we also found a property management company that will help us do all of our due diligence. So
Okay.
we walk whenever it's due diligence time. Our property management company will meet us on site now. I mean, we did a lot of our due diligence ourselves, but now our property management companies meet us on site, and they walk every unit with us. They go through every application. They go through every lease. They go through all of the documents.
Okay.
We do have a list of things that we ask for during the due diligence process, and basically the list is uh, we have the basic list, but then there's some things that like the applications. A lot of people don't ask for the applications. We ask for the applications, especially now after the whole rent moratorium thing, because we want to know, do they have a job? How long have they been at that job? Are they making 3 times what the rent is? Those are the
Yeah.
things that you have to look at. And there's a lot of times that we'll have to say, okay, well, we'll have to reevaluate when we close on this deal. We'll have to go in and ask all of these tenants to re-up their application process, right? We'll allow them to
Sure.
stay until it's renewal, but they're going to have to, look at the application.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's going to be a basis for your value
yeah,
eventually.
yeah,
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cash Flow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cash Flow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show. I mean, the the firmness of those leases and the
yeah,
adequate, having adequate data to back them
yep,
up. I mean, everybody wants to know how these commercial guys, how they do what they do. They go out and they get a credit worthy tenant,
mm-hmm.
which, and then getting a credit worthy tenant, then they step, Hobby Lobby's not gonna run out. I mean, obviously they can, and
Right,
they haven't, but I'm saying in theory they could, but it's the same scenario just on a little more of a
Yeah.
micro scale. It's the basis for your value because it's what ties everything together contractually to give your
Yeah.
investors and or a new buyer the returns that they're
Oh,
expecting.
absolutely. Absolutely. I remember going through the process of looking at the applications, and that was one of the first things that I learned how to do is look at the applications and find out what's on it, right? So I remember looking
Yeah.
at these applications, and they had rented an apartment to an unemployed individual. I was like, I I don't understand how that worked. They're unemployed, but you're going to rent to them. I
I mean, were they getting
no,
some type of
no Section 8.
they didn't
No,
have any verifiable
they didn't
income?
have any verifiable income. There was no social. So I looked for Social Security income. I looked for government assistance. I looked for everything, and there was nothing. They had
No mother, son, daughter, friend
nope,
on the lease with
nope,
them, nothing, just
just unemployed,
straight up
straight up
unemployed.
unemployed, and they
That's
still rented
that's
it. And
irresponsible.
I was like,
That's irresponsible for on everybody's part. I mean, that's as much the landlord's part.
oh yeah,
That's as much the landlord's fault as it is the
oh
tenant.
absolutely.
The tenant was probably needing somewhere to go, and
And
you know, so
the only thing
yeah.
I can think of is maybe the manager at the time. It was a friend of the manager's. I don't know, but it literally said unemployed on it, and I was like, and they still rented to that person.
Wow.
That was great.
Were they current?
No,
I didn't think so.
no.
I knew the answer to that question. I just thought I'd make sure.
But I mean, that's
Wow.
how we do our due diligence. You know, it makes it easier when you have a team in place, and it makes it easier when you have a property management company that is willing
So
to do that.
do you have somebody, I know you said you had some folks that helped you with
Yeah,
this, but do you have somebody that actually takes that application, goes to that person and says, "Can I see your ID?" and does
upon
the whole
renewal
like
of their lease.
okay, upon renewal,
Hmm.
not during due
Correct.
diligence.
It's upon renewal of their
Okay.
leases that they will get a new application, and
But
that's
you
just
reviewed
standard,
everything in due
right?
diligence and made
And made notes.
sure that
Hmm.
everything
So we make
okay.
notes. If I mean, like, if we could get an application that said they were unemployed and there's no verifiable income, no Social Security, government assistance, anything, then they put that to the side and they make note. My property management company makes a note and says, okay, we have to get an application renewed for these people whenever their lease is up. And so that's how.
Yeah, because maybe, you know, especially if they're current,
Right.
maybe they have a job now.
Right.
Maybe they've had a change in
Correct.
circumstances. Maybe they've graduated nursing
Yep.
school or whatever the case
Yep.
is. So
Yep.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Now what about physically with the property? What are some things that you either picked up along the way of learning due diligence or maybe you were like, oh, hey, we need to check this? Because
Yeah.
I've had everything again, everything from somebody running a camera in a sewer and saving themselves million. I don't remember what the guy said that saved him, but
Yeah.
to not finding anything and let's go through it. So what did you learn there?
So a couple of things. So one of the first things that really helped me was me being a house flipper for so long, right? And knowing
Yeah,
the little things here and there that I like to look for during a house flip and say, okay, does it need a new foundation? Does it need a new roof? Does it? And those kind of things just roll over. Is there foundation issues on these properties? How old are their HVACs? How old are their roofs? Look at the siding. Is there holes in the siding? Things like that. And then we start looking at the plumbing on the inside, what's going on with the plumbing, because those are going to be all of your large ticket items, right? And yes,
sure.
we will spend the money to bring somebody out to camera older properties. Their plumbing on the outside, we'll have them do a camera shot. It could be, $500, $800, $1,500, depending on the location and the person that you use. But it's better than, again, spending, I don't know, $125,000 that we had to spend last year on
Yeah,
fixing a
and
plumbing issue. Yeah.
and it doesn't take long. You get into some of those mains to add up pretty
Yep.
quick, and then
Yep.
especially especially if you have to dig across
Yeah.
old fiber lines and stuff like that. I mean, they
Yeah.
could get costly pretty quick. So,
Yeah.
well, man, that's yeah. So, and spending that extra money, I mean, there again, it's something that you could always, you spend $1,500 and you find out there's a $200,000
Yeah.
problem, and you're like, okay, we either need to reduce the purchase price by
Right.
200,000 or you need to have that fixed before we
Correct.
close. It's just, the same type of deal. And the bottom line is that, at least the way I feel, especially if there's a broker involved, is that once that bell is rung of, hey, this thing's, just any minute now you're going to have a huge sewer backup and this and this and that and whatever, and so when you have once that bell's been rung, I mean, that seller basically is kind of has his hands
Hmm.
tied and saying, all right, we either have to fix it or reduce the
Right.
price because somebody's going to request that we fix it. And if
Yep.
there's a broker involved and the broker knows about it, then that's a whole different ball of wax there too. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the secrets that I like to let people know, a lot of people don't know that the roofing guys will
mhm.
come out and inspect your roof at no cost for the most part.
Yeah,
I mean, so
yeah,
you can have them come out and do an inspection on your roof. I mean, take them to lunch, sometimes give them a 6-pack, whatever, that kind of thing, or a 12-pack nowadays. But I mean,
yeah, that's right.
that's not an extra cost for you for them to come and look at it, but it could be an extra cost if they didn't.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So,
And and there's a certain amount that if you're as the principal of a deal or the sponsor of a deal, there's a certain amount of that stuff that we have to be versed in as
yes,
well to maybe you're not going to crawl through a cobweb filled crawl space,
correct.
but when you're walking through the property, I mean, look where the roof joints meet
Yeah,
and look where the corners are and
yeah,
look where, use what I call common
common sense.
sense. And
Yep.
if that common sense escapes us for some reason, maybe the person would be in the wrong
Right.
business. I mean, you just corners and joints and all that stuff is just something that you should naturally be tracking.
That's
So,
correct. I agree.
um, well, listen, we're getting close to the end of our time
Okay.
here, and I've got a few questions that we just that we ask every
Okay.
guest, and there's no right or wrong answer. But what is the best book that you've recently read or are currently reading?
Okay, so the best book that that I continue to recently read, is called "The Best Ever Apartment Syndication Book" by Joe
Joe Fairless.
Fairless. You probably have a lot of
Yep.
people that say that, and so I
Yep.
I I frequent that book quite a bit, quite
Yeah.
a bit.
And actually, and I'll be quite truthful, the whole meetup thing came from that. And I haven't read that book in the traditional sense of like sitting down and just reading each page,
Right,
one
right.
page at a time. I've jumped around because there was some things that I really, really, really already had such a solid grasp
Yeah,
on that I didn't need to go back and at the
right.
time relearn. And so I've jumped around in it. I've never read it in order. And I hit that meetup.com thing I don't even know how long ago it's been now, but I was like, wow, that's pretty neat.
Yes.
So, and I was on the Best Ever podcast when we were in Denver back in
All
February, I
right.
believe it
Yeah.
was. So,
Awesome.
but I don't know if it's even aired yet. I don't know how many episodes he's got in the hopper, but anyhow. So, but what is the best trip or or dream vacation that you have taken or hope to take?
Oh, okay. So, the best dream vacation is probably Bora Bora. I
Wow.
mean, I really like the water. I like being on the water. So it's
Yep.
definitely going to be, I don't know, I may go by myself at this point. You know, sometimes you just need that time, right? But yeah,
Yep.
I
That's
have my
right.
eyes on Bora Bora right now.
My grandmother always would talk to herself, and when I was little, I'd say, why are you talking to yourself?" And she'd say, "Sometimes I just got to talk to somebody's family."
I love
And I
it.
was like,
I love your grandma. She's
"All
my
right."
type of
So,
lady.
so there you go. Yeah, and sometimes you just have to have that time by yourself,
Definitely.
and it's there's definitely nothing wrong with that at all. So,
Yeah.
Christy, if the listeners have heard something that they can that has resonated with
Yeah.
them, or they may wish to reach out to you and talk to you a little more about maybe either your due diligence process or maybe discuss with you something about where you got your coaching or
Sure.
anything along those lines, what is the best way for the listeners to reach out and get in touch with you?
So the best way to get in touch with me is through my email. It is
Okay.
Christy at KeetonRealtyInvestments.com.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, let's spell Christy out for you. It's Christy, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So it's Christy at
Yep.
Keeton Realty, Realty Investments, plural. .com. My listeners know I always make sure we get the S's and the dots and
And that's
names
Keeton,
spelled right.
Keeton, right?
Keeton Keeton Realty, Christy Christy
Yep.
at Keeton
There you
Keeton
go.
Realty Investments.com.
Correct.
So awesome.
Yes.
Well,
Thank
Christy,
you.
hey, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Absolutely.
And we hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day. And thanks again.
Appreciate it.
Cashflow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.